Good morning, this is Mission Control Houston. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's edition of ISS Update this Thursday, December 27. You're joining us now inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where the team here has been monitoring the systems aboard the station and supporting the day's activities of the Expedition 34 crew members. Leading the Orbit 2 team here in the Station Flight Control Room today is Flight Director Greg Whitney, and next to him is astronaut Jack Fisher, who's serving as Capcom, relaying all ground messages up to the crew. And now aboard the International Space Station is Commander of the complex, NASA astronaut Kevin Ford, with flight engineers Russian cosmonauts Oleg Novitsky and Yevgeny Tarelkin, who've just begun their third month in space, shown here on the left-hand side, and then joining them, three new crew members, flight engineers Roman Romanenko, Chris Hadfield, and Tom Marshburn. They're on the right-hand side. The newest crew members of Expedition 34, Romanenko, Hadfield, and Marshburn, arrived to the International Space Station last week on December 21st aboard their Soyuz TMA-07M spacecraft after docking it to the Rossviet module following their launch on December 19th. Today, the newcomers will complete their sixth day in space. Meanwhile, they're aboard the station to greet their new crew members. Commander Ford, with flight engineers Novitsky and Tarelkin, had launched to the orbiting complex aboard their Soyuz spacecraft as Expedition 33 crew back in October. Their vehicle docked to the Poisk module of the space station 2 days after their launch on October 25th, and today they will complete 64 consecutive days in space. The space station with its crew aboard is flying now at an altitude of a little more than 260 statute miles. The orbiting facility is on a night pass on a southeast track, having come across the Indian Ocean, now making a pass across the west coast of Australia and over the Southern Ocean before making a northeast turn just south of New Zealand. The Expedition 34 crew members began their day with some time this morning for work prep, breakfast, morning hygiene, and a daily station inspection. The crew then kicked off the day with the first of 2 daily planning conferences with ground controllers around the world to review the day's activities and plan for the next set of tasks. Commander Ford began his morning working with a science experiment known as In-Space 3 that looks at the changes of physical properties of colloids and fluids in response to magnetic fields. This research has possible technological application in structure design here on Earth, structures such as bridges and buildings to better withstand earthquake forces. Currently, Commander Ford and his crewmates, Novitsky, Tarelkin, Romanenko, Hadfield, and Marshburn, are participating in an onboard training session to review station's emergency hardware. The Expedition 34 crew will review the locations of equipment and positions of valves required in emergencies. The crew then will inspect each hatch throughout the orbiting complex in both the Russian and the U.S. segments, while ground teams review the crew interactions in an emergency. After a conference with the ground following today's crew onboard training session, Ford and flight engineer Marshburn will spend the afternoon working with the Lego bricks study that uses common Lego bricks to demonstrate simple science concepts and construction in a microgravity environment. Earlier this morning, flight engineer Chris Hadfield had deployed small radiation bubble detectors at several locations across the station that may provide important data for accurate risk assessment of neutron radiation in space that could lead to advances to reduce astronauts' exposure to radiation during future missions. And with Marshburn's help, Hadfield performed a session of the NeuroSpat experiment. This is a human body study that studies the effect of gravitational context on brain processing. Shown here, Marshburn is assisting Hadfield with the EEG cap. Through a virtual reality session, at least 5 cognitive processes are examined that include perception, attention, memorization, decision, and action. Meanwhile, on the Russian side of the house, Russian flight engineers Oleg Novitsky, Yevgeny Tarelkin, and Roman Romanenko divide their day between hardware inventory, maintenance, and several science experiments, including Matryoshka study that looks at the radiation environment dynamics of the space station. And each of the crew members will put in their daily 2 hours of exercise using the onboard gym equipment that includes a station bicycle, a treadmill, and an advanced resistive exercise device that simulates weightlifting here on Earth. The crew will then wrap up their day with a final daily planning conference and is then scheduled to go to bed at 3:30 p.m. Central Time. This is Mission Control Houston.